And here's where this becomes really important for you. Because if pain can be influenced by these factors, it also means pain can be influenced in a positive direction. Are you ready to get back to what you love after knee replacement? The Total Knee Success Podcast is your trusted guide with practical tips, evidence-based strategies, and no fluff. It's not personal medical advice, just solid education to help you manage pain, regain mobility, and get back to living the life you love. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Total Knee Success Podcast. I'm Michelle. If you've ever had a moment where your knee feels better one day and then suddenly worse the next, and you can't quite explain why, you are not alone. Your knee may be healing, but your brain didn't get the memo. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why pain can continue even after healing and feel more confident in how to break the cycle. This is the second episode in a 4-part series on pain. If you haven't listened to episode 63 yet, you can always go back and listen after this, because it lays the foundation for everything we're talking about here. I want to bring you back to Linda, someone we introduced in the last episode, a made-up patient we use to help walk through what many people experience after knee replacement. In the last episode, we left her at a moment that's incredibly common after knee replacement. She felt pain, interpreted it as something going wrong, and started to hesitate just a little more in how she moved. Now let's fast forward a couple of weeks. Linda is still doing her exercises. She's still going to therapy. But something has shifted. She notices that certain movements, standing up from a chair, going downstairs, even walking longer distances, feel more uncomfortable than she expected. So she starts adjusting. She avoids certain movements. She shortens her walks. She braces a little more when she moves. And she pays very close attention to every sensation in her knee. And without realizing it, Linda has entered a loop. This is what we're focusing on today, because for many people, chronic pain after knee replacement isn't random, and it's not always a sign of ongoing damage. It's often a pattern that develops over time. And once you see that pattern, things can start to make more sense. Here's what that loop looks like. It often starts with fear. Pain shows up, and the brain interprets it as a potential threat. That makes sense. Your brain's job is to protect you. But after surgery, the protective system can become a little overactive. That fear then creates tension. Muscles tighten. Movement becomes more guarded, and instead of smooth, natural motion, everything becomes just a little more rigid. That tension can increase pain, not because something is damaged, but because the system is more sensitive and more alert, even if the joint itself is doing what we would expect at this stage. And then that increased pain feeds right back into fear, creating a cycle where fear leads to tension leads to more pain, and pain reinforces the fear. Around and around it goes. And this is the cycle that traps so many people. Now, I want to pause here and say something really important. That does not mean your pain is in your head. What it means is that your nervous system, the system that processes pain, can become more sensitive over time. In pain science, you may also hear the term nosiplastic pain, which describes pain that is driven more by how the nervous system is processing signals than by ongoing tissue damage. There's a growing body of research showing that after surgeries like total knee replacement, the nervous system can remain on high alert longer than expected. In some people, it turns up the volume on pain signals, even when the tissue itself is healing as expected. We call this sensitization. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that someone is sensitive as a person. This is a nervous system process, not a personality trait. And it's one of the reasons pain can persist beyond what we would expect based on healing timelines. In fact, large longitudinal research looking at recovery after knee replacement shows that while many people improve, a significant portion continue to report ongoing pain or functional difficulties some months after surgery. That does not mean the surgery failed. It means recovery is more complex than just tissue healing. Your brain, your nervous system, your experiences, and your expectations all play a role. Let's go back to Linda again. As she starts avoiding movements, something else begins to happen. Her world gets a little smaller. She walks less, moves less confidently, and starts to associate certain activities with pain. And her brain begins to adapt to that pattern. This is where things start to become clearer because pain is not just a signal, it's also something the brain can learn. The more often a certain movement is paired with pain, the stronger that association becomes. Over time, the brain starts predicting pain, and sometimes that pain can show up even before the movement fully happens. This isn't because anything is damaged in that moment, it's because the brain is trying to protect you based on past experience. We see this across many musculoskeletal conditions, not just after knee replacement. The relationship between movement, pain, and function is not always straightforward, and in some populations, the link between physical changes and pain is actually quite inconsistent, which tells us something important. Pain is influenced by more than just what's happening in the joint. It's influenced by the nervous system, by stress, by attention, and by what the brain expects. If Linda starts paying very close attention to her knee all day, monitoring every step and every sensation, her brain becomes more tuned into that area. And when the brain is paying more attention, sensations can feel stronger. This is not imagined. It's how the nervous system works. Parts of the brain, like the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula, help process the emotional and sensory experience of pain, while attention networks in the prefrontal cortex can increase how much those signals stand out. So when attention stays locked onto the knee, the volume on those signals can increase. Now, layer in stress. If Linda is worried about her recovery, frustrated with her progress, or feeling unsure about what's normal, that stress can further increase sensitivity in the system. We know from broader pain science that psychological and behavioral factors like fear, expectations, and stress can influence pain experience and recovery patterns. And here's where this becomes really important for you. Because if pain can be influenced by these factors, it also means pain can be influenced in a positive direction. But before we go there and before we get into that in the next episode, I want to help you recognize if you might be in this loop. So let me ask you to check in with yourself for a moment. As you think about your own experience right now, do you feel like you might be in this loop? What tends to make your pain worse? Is it a specific movement after a busy day or when you're stressed or tired? And just as important, what are you avoiding because of your pain? Are there things you used to do more easily that you've started pulling back from? Not because you physically can't, but because you're unsure how your knee will respond? If you're noticing those patterns, there's a good chance your system has started to fall into that cycle. And you're not doing anything wrong. You're responding in a very normal way to pain. But it does mean you may be caught in that loop. And the good news is, loops can be changed. And even recognizing that this loop might be happening is a very positive step. It means you're starting to understand what your system is doing, and that awareness is what allows things to begin to shift. Let's ground this in something practical, because one of the misconceptions I hear from patients is the idea that if pain is still present, something must not be healing correctly. But when we look at outcomes after knee replacement, recovery is not identical for everyone. Some people progress steadily. Some improve in bursts. Some have periods where pain increases before things settle again. There are even differences based on things like other health conditions. For example, research has shown that individuals with diabetes may experience slower or less pronounced improvements in pain and function after knee replacement, although the certainty of that evidence varies. So variability is normal. What we want to understand is not just whether pain is present, but the pattern it's following, because patterns give us direction. And right now, if Linda continues in this loop, fear, tension, pain, avoidance, her system will continue to reinforce that pattern. But if we can begin to interrupt that cycle, even in small ways, things can start to shift. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. In the next episode, episode 65, how to actually reduce pain, what works and what doesn't, I'm going to walk you through what actually helps reduce pain and how to start applying it in a way that feels doable and safe. We're going to move from understanding the problem to actively changing it. And if this episode is helping you to see your experience a little more clearly, I want to invite you to go a step further. If you're interested in going a little deeper into this topic, I've put together a short 30-page educational download called Making Sense of Pain After Knee Replacement. It walks through these concepts in a little more detail and helps you to understand how to apply them. You can find it in the show notes if you'd like to check it out. Because understanding pain is powerful, but having a plan helps you take the next step. So as you move through the next couple of days, I want you to start noticing your patterns, not judging them and not trying to fix everything all at once, just noticing, because awareness is always the first step in changing anything. Before we wrap up, a quick safety note. Most of what we talked about today reflects normal patterns in how pain can behave after knee replacement. There are, however, situations where pain may signal something outside the usual pattern. Things like increasing calf pain with swelling or tenderness, shortness of breath, chest pain, a fever, or a knee that's becoming more red hot and swollen instead of gradually settling and improving. Those can be signs that something else is going on. If you notice these kinds of symptoms, it's important to contact your surgeon or medical team so they can evaluate what's happening. Next time in episode 65, we'll talk about how to reduce pain in a way that works with your body, not against it. You're not stuck in this, and small changes in how you approach it can start to make a difference. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Michelle, and this has been the Total Knee Success Podcast. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Discover more at totalkneesuccess.com, and be sure to subscribe and share, because every step forward takes you closer to living the life you love.